The Nun 2, a sequel that absolutely no one asked for. Let's talk about it. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Josh. Today we're going to be reviewing The Nun 2, which came out this weekend. This is a rated R horror film that is in the Conjuring universe. This is a prequel to the Conjuring films and a sequel to 2018's The Nun, which I didn't hate quite as aggressively as a lot of other people did, but it's certainly nowhere near good. That much I can admit. Now, walking into this movie, I had three concerns that were sort of rolling around in the back of my head. First of all, this is a sequel to a prequel that shouldn't have really existed in the first place. Again, I didn't hate The Nun from 2018, but it's certainly not good. It's mostly just a jump scare factory, a conveyor belt of really cheap scares, a little bit of cool atmosphere, but nothing really that great. And for the most part, the Conjuring universe doesn't need to exist. Those first two Conjuring films by James Wan were really good. Other than that, there aren't many memorable entries in the franchise. Number two, this movie was directed by Michael Chavez, I believe his name is. He directed The Curse of La Llorona, which I despised, and also The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It, which is the third of the Conjuring trilogy. I didn't really care for that one either. I thought it was pretty just meh. And lastly, this is a movie that is about a demon stalking people, and they need to figure out a way to banish it back to hell. There's thousands of movies with that exact premise out there, and with each bad one that I see, I find myself less and less interested in that premise because there's just not much new you can do with it. So at that point, you're just relying on the director's execution. Do they do a good job with the scares and the suspense? In the case of the first Nun, they didn't do a good job, but how about this one? As far as positives with The Nun 2, okay, in all seriousness, there were a couple things that I liked in this movie. The performances are pretty solid. We have Taissa Farmiga returning from the first film. I don't like the character. I don't think there's much depth there, although they do try to insert a little bit here, but the performance is good. Storm Reid is in this, another actor who is totally underutilized in the film. I don't think the character, I can't remember her name, I think it was Sister Deborah or something like that. Solid performance, but she's given next to nothing to work with. Other than the performances, I liked the end credits. The style that they used was kind of cool. You know it's bad when I'm using the end credits as a positive for the movie. And I guess you could say this one is a little bit less jump scare oriented because it does try to expand on the lore and the mythos of Valak, the main demon. But the problem is the nun herself just isn't really scary anymore. She was scary in The Conjuring 2 when she was introduced. The last Nun movie was pretty bad, so it kind of muddled the mythos of this character and answered questions I didn't want answered. And again, it was a conveyor belt of cheap scares, so it kind of made the character less scary, and I don't know that they can really fix that at this point. And another thing that I want to point out is that the previous film left off in a very specific spot that I thought was meant to lead straight into The Conjuring and the way Valak appears in that series. And then this movie comes along and basically, without spoiling things, does a very similar sort of arc to what the first movie did. There's this guy who's possessed by the demon, these two sisters, this time joined by a few other characters that feel totally unnecessary and don't need to be there at all. They investigate and they discover that this demon is actually after something. And so now they're just trying to get to this object, this ancient relic, before Valak can, and banish this thing to hell for good. But much like that 2018 film, you know that this doesn't get rid of the demon for good. So what is the point of this? What is the point of having two films that are telling this story that you know is not going to end in a satisfying amount of closure?
What's she doing? She's standing there.
Also, there is one moment in the movie where something is revealed about Sister Irene. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but it made me think that they were about to tie this movie in with the original Conjuring movies in a way that actually would have been kind of satisfying and answered a couple of questions I had about the last movie, and they just didn't. This movie doesn't commit to anything. I will say it had a couple of cool scares, but you can say that about just about every horror movie. There's a sequence that we see in the trailer where Sister Irene is standing in front of this magazine rack. The wind starts blowing the pages and they form the silhouette of the nun. I mean, that was kind of cool, but I saw it in the trailer, so the jump scare itself didn't scare me. It just kind of made my eyes glaze over. The score was good by Marco Beltrami, and I feel that his score is so good that this movie doesn't really deserve him. There are a couple of moments that are meant to evoke emotion, and I think the score is going to emotionally manipulate people into thinking that the movie's actually good. The music is good, I'll say that, but good music can't fix shit writing, which is what this film has. I know the first Nun does have its share of fans out there, so as far as comparing this to the first one, I think I might have liked the first one better. This, again, does dive more into the lore than the first film, and I think it's a little more brutal and dark at times too. But if I'm being honest, I think the first one had better atmosphere, and I think I would just prefer a jump scare factory over the utter nonsense and just lack of creativity that this movie has. I probably should go and rewatch that movie. Maybe it's worse than I'm remembering. But as a whole, guys, The Nun 2 was somehow disappointing, even though I went in with pretty rock bottom expectations. So I'm going to give this film 1.5 stars out of 5. I don't recommend checking this out. It's definitely one of the worst horror films of the year. But again, if you're a huge fan of the Conjuring franchise and you've liked every entry, I'm not personally one of those people, so you might get more of a kick out of this than I did. So there you have it, guys. Those are my thoughts on The Nun 2. Pretty lackluster. I forgot to mention there is a mid-credits scene, and I knew about it beforehand. That's the only reason I stayed through the credits. It's just sequel bait. It's like this is the definition of milking money out of a franchise that died long ago. I mean, it's more of a caricature of that sort of stereotype than Marvel, if you ask me. Part of me deep down was kind of hoping this would be the Annabelle creation of the Nun series. Of course, Annabelle was a prequel to The Conjuring. It was utter shit. And then the sequel to that prequel was actually pretty solid. But no such luck here, unfortunately. As always, guys, be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and do drop your thoughts down in the comments below, and also rank all of the Conjuring movies from worst to best. I'm curious to see what kind of opinions are out there. I might do a ranking video myself sometime in the near future. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.